Jai Hind to everyone. Myself Manoj Kumar Sharma, Assistant Professor in Computer Science and Engineering Department, Ajay Kumar Garg Engineering College, Ghaziabad. Today we will discuss the topic of data warehouse and data mining subjects. My content is warehouse management process and plannings, warehouse implementation guidelines, hardware and operating system of data warehouse, and client server architectures involved in data warehouse and data mining. Now, what is WMS? Warehouse management system is computer software that help firms keep track all of their inventory process and manage how product move from warehouse to the stores. It helps firms make the best use of their employee storage and space and equipment by organizing and boosting the resources uses. Basically, warehouse management system manage the inventory process, provide the content according to the user requirements and client requirements as per the availability of the data. These are the warehouse implementations process. This graph show first process is requirement analysis and capacity planning. Second, hardware integration. Third, modeling, physical modeling, source, ETL process, extraction, transformation and loading. And second one is populate the each data warehouse, user applications, roll out the warehouse and applications. These are the steps for implementing the warehouse. Now, first content and topic is requirement analysis and capacity planning. The first process in the data warehouse involves defining enterprise's needs. First, we focus according to the market aspects. Enterprise needs, defining the architectures, schemas, and carrying out capacity planning and selecting the hardware and software tools. This step will contain the consulting senior management as well as the different stakeholders. So, first important point is defining the enterprise needs, defining the sources, defining the architectures and hardware and software tools basically used for implementing the data warehouse. Second, hardware integration. When the hardware and software has been selected, they required to put by integrating with the servers and the storage methods and the user software tools. These software tools basically used to find the and fetch the data from the data warehouses. And third one is modeling. Modeling basically define the architecture of the data warehouse, how to store the data, how to place the data, how to define the data. So these are the defined by the modeling process and significant stage that involve designing the data warehouse schemas. In previous lectures, we already discussed with the schemas like star schema, snowflake schema, and fact constellation schema. Basically, these three types of schemas used in data warehouses. So, this may contain using a modeling tools if the data warehouse are sophisticated. Fourth point is physical modelings. After completing the schemas and views, for the data warehouse to perform efficiently, physically modeling is needed. How to define, how to structure the data. This contains designing the physical data warehouse, organizing, data placement, data partitioning, deciding and access technique and the indexings. Main thing is before implementing the data warehouse, there are some key points should be involved in implementing the data warehouse. First one is data marts, metadata, ETL process, data staging areas. These are the key points. Now, fifth implementation process is sources. When we designing the data warehouse, first you define and find the sources. Different sources, we can easily extract the data from different sources like business aspects, from health, medical sectors, from education sectors. So, first information of the data warehouse is likely to come from several data sources, distinct data sources. This step contain identifying and containing the sources using the APIs and gateways. Now, ETL process. ETL is basically define the extract, transformation and loading. Means first we extract the data from different sources. Transformation means if we receive the data from different sources with different schemas and architectures. So we need to define the anomaly, we remove the redundancy of the data, maintain the consistency of the data before storing the data into the data warehouse and staging. After completing the transformation process, we need to data store and in the data warehouses. So this ETL process from the sources systems will require to get through an ETL phases. The process of designing and implementing the ETL phase may contain defining a suitable ETL tools, vendor and purchasing, implementing the tools. There are two things basically used in ETL process. First one is cloud strategy and second is data virtualizations. Cloud strategy basically use if we need to scalable the data warehouse, if we need to analyze and extract the data warehouse. So we use the cloud strategy and cloud computing technology. So consider the cloud data warehouse for scalability. Data virtualization reduce the need of expensive ETL tool. We can easily use the data tools from data virtualizations concepts. Now next point is populate the data warehouse. Once that ETL tool have been agreed upon, testing the tools will be needed, perhaps using a staging area. Once everything is working properly, the ETL tools may be used in populating the warehouse given the schemas and view definitions. User applications. For the data warehouse to be helpful, there must be end user applications. This step contains designing and implementing applications required by the end users. After implementing all the process and content, roll out the data warehouse and applications. Once the data warehouse has been populated and the end client application tested, the warehouse system and the operations may be rolled out for the user community to the uses and launching the marketing environment. These are the data warehouse guidelines. What are the guidelines basically used to implement the data warehouse? First guideline is build incrementally, need a champion, senior management supports, ensure quality, corporate strategy, business plan, training, adaptability and joint management. These are the guidelines before implementing the data warehouse. First, build incrementally. What is incrementally? Means when we implement the data warehouse, we need to ensure data warehouse should be in iterative manner and scalability manners. So data warehouse must be built incrementally. Generally, it is recommended that a data marts may. What is data marts? Data marts. Data marts basically define the specific area and specific subjects. It is sub part of the data warehouse. If we have a databases and data warehouse related to all contents, like we have a academic data, we had a medical data, we have a business aspects data. So we need to create a data marts according to the specific areas. Now, an enterprise data warehouse can then be implemented in a iterative manner. It allows all data marts to extract information from the data warehouse according to the client and user requirements and needs. Need a champion. A data warehouse project must have a champion who is active to carry out considerable research into expect price and benefits of the projects. Data warehouse projects require inputs from many units in an enterprises and therefore need to be driven by someone who is needed for interacting with the people in the enterprises. Senior management supports. This is the important key points in guideline for implementing the data warehouse. A data warehouse project must be fully supported by the senior management, given the resources, intensive features of the subject projects and the time they can take to implement and warehouse project signal for sustained containment from senior management. Ensure quality. When we implement and designing a data warehouse, quality must be in adequate manners. The only record that has been cleaned and is of a quality that is implicit by the organization should be loaded in the data warehouse. Means there is no anomalies required in data warehouse. There is no duplicacy required in the data warehouse. All data should be in consistent state. When we store the data in the data warehouse, means we can reduce must be reduce the redundancy of the data and maintain the consistency of the data before storing the data in the data warehouse. Corporate strategies. A data warehouse project must be suitable for corporate strategy and business goals, because data warehouse and corporate strategy and business goal both are related to each other. So we need to find the aspects of business goals. These purpose of the project must be defining before the beginning of the projects. Now, sixth point is business plan. The financial cost of hardware and software people were expect, advantage and project plan for the data warehouse project must be clearly outlined and understood by all the stakeholders. Without such understanding, rumors about expenditures and benefits can become the only source of the data and supervision of the projects. Next phase and guideline is training. The data warehouse project must not overlook data warehouse training requirements. For data warehouse projects to be a successful, the customers must be trained to use the means we can designing the data warehouse like user-friendly environments. We proposed and provide the user-friendly environment to the clients and users. Adaptability. The project should build in flexibility so that change may be made to the data warehouse. Means scalability features must be involved in the data warehouse implementations. According to the user requirements, client requirements, we can update and scalable and extend the data warehouse according to the requirements. Joint management. The project must be handled by the IT sector and business professionals in the enterprises. Because of IT structures and business professionals, both are involved and both are related to each other. To ensure that proper communication with the stakeholders and which the project is the target of assisting the enterprises business professionals must be involved in the projects along with the technical professionals. Now, next topic is hardware and operating system for the data warehouse. All the data extraction, transformation, integration and staging jobs run on the selected hardware under the chosen operating systems. When you transport the consolidated and integrated data from staging area to your data warehouse repository, you make use to a server hardware and operating system of softwares. So we need to use the client server technology, multi-process technology, because when we implement and store the data in the data warehouse, historical data in the data warehouse from different sources. So first step is E, T and L. Extract from different sources, transformation of data, maintain the consistency and loading the data into the staging areas and data warehouse. When the queries are initiated from the client workstations, the server hardware in conjunction with the database software execute the queries and produce the results according to the user and client requirements. Scalability. These are the guidelines for hardware selections. Scalabilities. When your data warehouse grow in terms of the number of users, the number of queries and complexity of the queries, ensure that your selected hardware could be scale up. If we have 100 users according to the requirements, after some time we have 2000 users. So we can easily scale up the hardware and software according to the requirements. Support. Vendor support is crucial for hardware maintenance. Make sure that the support from the hardware vendor is at the highest possible levels. Processing power. High performance processors are needed for complex query handling and data processing. Sometimes many number of users, multiple required send accordingly. So we need to multiple processors. So for handling the complex query and data processing. Networking. High speed network ensure quick data transfer between client and the servers. Now next topic is client server computing model and data warehouse. What is client server computing model? Client server computing model basically show how data transfer from server to clients, how to request the client, how to respond the server. These are the basic concept in client server model. in a distributed architecture where client requests servers and servers provide them. The client send a request to the servers which process them and return to the results. Client basically do not share the resources among themselves but depend on the servers. Common example of email system is like World Wide Web, like browsers, email apps, interact with servers to access content and send the data. This is the basic definition of client and servers. When we talk about the client, it refers to a device that requests and receives service from a server. The client is the entity that initiate, communicate, asking for data or resources from the servers. Like web browsers, Google Chromes, Mozilla, Firefox, Safari or common client applications that request data from a servers render web pages. What is server? Servers on the other hand is a remote computer or systems that provide data, resources or servers to client. It listens to incoming client request and providing the response according to the client request. Networking. Networking is a backbone of the client server computing. In warehouse environment, network as the backbone that connects client and servers. Robust network ensures smooth and efficient data exchanging, which is essential for faster query response. ETL process, extract the data, transformation of data and loading the data in the data warehouse and staging area. Scalability, as warehouse grow, the network must handle increasing data traffic without bottlenecks and without any distractions. Reliability and security. Networks must ensure continuous uptime, secure transmission and minimal data losses. This is the basic structure of the client server model. This is the server, networking area and mediums, and these are the different clients like phone, personal computer, laptops. These are the request transfer to the servers through this networking medium and server providing the response according to the user requirement. This is the basic structure of client server models. Now, what are the advantages of client server model? Centralized data management, easy to maintain and back up the data because server handle the all queries, maintain the all database on a single places. Cost efficiency. Client require less processing powers. Scalability. According to the clients, according to the users, we can easily scale up the data warehouse and client server computing technology. Security. It also provide the high security and authentication and authorizations and also maintain the integrity of data during the transmission from client to server and server to client. Data recovery. We can easily recover the data with the using of different applications, different tools like replications methods. We can easily recover the data from the client server computing. There are two types of client server computing models, 2-tier and 3-tier. 2-tier architectures is similar to a basic client server model, means only two layers basically used in 2-tier architecture. First one is client and second one is server. Client basically direct communicate with the servers according to the 2-tier architectures. Similar to a basic client server model, the application at the client and directly communicate with the database on the server sides. API like ODBC and JDBC are used to the interactions. The server side is responsible for providing the queries, processing and transactions management functionalities. Second is 3-tier architecture. Basically 3 layers here used in 3-tier architecture. First one is client, third is server and second is application layer. Means client communicate with the servers through applications. 3 is another layer between the client and the servers. The client does not directly communicate with the servers. Instead, it interact with an application servers which further communicate with the database system, and then query processing and transactions management take places. What are the advantages of three-tier architectures? First one is enhanced scalability. Scalability is enhanced due to the distribution deployment of the application servers. Data integrity, providing the security and maintain the integrity. Three-tier architecture maintain the data integrity. Since there is a middle layer between the clients, it also maintain the authentication and authorization of the client. Security. Three-tier architectures improve security. This type of model prevents direct interaction of the client with the servers. Now, these are the some benefits of the client-server model. First one is scalability. I am also explain. Enable scaling of both client and server components independently based on the demand, based on the requirements. Centralized management, centralized data storage and management on server sides, simplifying, administrating and ensuring the consistency. Resource utilization, distributed processing tasks between client and server, optimizing resource utilization and performances. Flexibility, allow user to access data warehouse resources from various client devices, locations, providing flexibility in the data access and analysis. The client-server computing model serves as the architecture foundation of data warehouse systems, enabling efficient interactions between end user and data warehouse servers. By dividing component tasks between client and servers, this model basically supports scalable, centralize, maintain the integrity of data, and ensure the security of the data. So today we discuss the 3 or 4 topics related to data warehouse, how to implement, what are the process for implementing the data warehouse, what are the guidelines for implementing the data warehouse, client server architectures. There are 2 types of basically architectures used in data warehouse, 2-tier and 3 tiers, and hardware and software resources utilizations in data warehouse. Thank you very much.